Eleanor, I was sitting at home the other day, and the house was just so quiet. It's a different kind of quiet, isn't it? Not the peaceful quiet of a sleeping house late at night, but a permanent, settled quiet. I find myself listening for things that aren't there anymore. The thump of my son's bass from his bedroom, the sound of the back door opening and closing for what always seemed like no reason at all. The absence of those sounds has become a noise all its own. The other morning, I made a full pot of coffee out of sheer habit, and at noon I looked over and it was still full, minus my 1 cup. It was such a small thing, but it felt so final. It got me thinking, do you ever feel like you spent so many years with a specific job title, mom or dad, that when the daily work of it ends, you're left wondering who you're supposed to be now?
Arthur, are you reading my mail? It's like you've installed a microphone in my brain. Just last week, I was vacuuming and found a tiny single Lego under the couch, probably a relic from a forgotten starship. I think it's been there for a decade. And for a second, my heart just ached. It was such a tangible piece of the past. Not because I missed the mess, heaven knows I complained about those things for years, but because it was an artifact from a different lifetime, the mom lifetime. A time when my world was a chaotic, beautiful, exhausting mess. Now it's just tidy, almost unnaturally so. The throw pillows are always perfectly fluffed, the mail on the counter is just bills and catalogs, no permission slips or report cards. It feels like we're living in a museum dedicated to a family that used to live here. I feel like a docent in my own home sometimes. And here, I want to say to imaginary guests, is the couch where homework battles were fought and won. Notice the faint stain? That's from a 2007 juice box incident. It's absurd, but it's real.
Exactly. It's that shift from beautiful chaos to stark tidiness, isn't it? That feeling of living in a museum is spot on. You walk past your daughter's old room and the door is closed, and you remember a time when that door was a revolving one, with friends coming in and out, music spilling into the hallway. Now it's just a guest room, waiting for guests that rarely come. There's an echo in every room of the life that was lived there. And it's not all sadness, but it is a profound sense of completion. The project is done, and you're so proud of the result, but you find your hands are empty. Today, I think we should talk about that. For everyone listening who might be in that same quiet house, feeling that same ache, or maybe even a surprising sense of relief mixed with guilt, we're going to talk about the challenge of redefining ourselves after the kids are grown and our careers are winding down. Who are we when we're no longer the parents we used to be? For me, the feeling was one of being obsolete. Like a perfectly good tool that's been put back in the box, but no one needs it for a job anymore. My whole schedule, my whole purpose was built around my family and my work. When both of those scaled back, the void was immense. Just the other day, my son called to say he was changing the oil in his car, and I immediately launched into a 10-point checklist. He just laughed and said, "Dad, I got it. I watched a video online." And he was right, of course. But my role as the go-to fixer, the holder of practical knowledge, it just vanished in that moment. I felt my shoulders slump. The fixer-in-chief had been laid off. It wasn't about control, it was my primary way of showing care. Fixing a leaky faucet or explaining how to budget was how I said, "I love you." Now, I have to learn a new language. The other day he was trying to set up some new smart home gadget and was getting frustrated. The old me would have jumped in, manual in hand. The new me had to just sit there and say, "You'll figure it out." And it felt like I was speaking a foreign tongue.
It's interesting you use the word obsolete. I felt more untethered, like a boat that's been cut from its mooring and is just drifting. As a teacher, my life was ruled by bells. The bell to start class, the bell to end it. My entire year was mapped out in semesters and holidays. At home, it was the bell of school pickup, the bell of dinner time, the bell of bedtime stories. When all the bells stopped ringing, I didn't know what to do with the silence. The lack of structure was terrifying. I'd walk into a room and forget why I was there because there wasn't a task, a kid's laundry, a meal to cook, papers to grade, pulling me forward. Does that make sense? For 30 years, I had an audience of 25 faces looking at me, waiting for me to impart wisdom. Now my main audience is my cat, and he's rarely impressed. I found myself wanting to leave notes for the mailman on his use of punctuation. It was a cry for purpose. I almost corrected a young mother's grammar in the checkout line at the grocery store. I actually opened my mouth to do it, then caught myself. Horrifying. It was my teacher's self, desperately looking for a classroom.
It makes perfect sense. We had a script for decades, and suddenly we're being asked to improvise. And nobody gave us our lines for this new scene. The stage is the same, but the play is entirely different. I think a lot of people listening have probably felt that same sense of being unscripted. What do you do when the main plot line of your life, raising a family, moves into its epilogue? You can't just keep rereading the previous chapters. It's like being a celebrated actor who, after the final curtain call of a long-running show, is suddenly just a person standing on an empty stage. The applause is faded, the lights are down, and you have to find your way home in the dark.
Well, at first, I tried to fill the silence. Oh, did I ever. I organized every closet, I alphabetized the spice rack, I laugh, then I reorganized it by cuisine. I was driving my husband crazy. I even created a binder for household appliance manuals. A binder with tabs and a table of contents. I was trying to manage the house the way I used to manage a family and a classroom. But the house didn't need that kind of managing anymore. I was creating work to feel needed, to feel like I was still in control of something. It was a frantic attempt to prove I still had value, even if it was just to myself. It was a way to avoid sitting still and feeling the discomfort of that big open space. That frantic energy was a shield against the quiet.
That's the core of it, isn't it? The need to feel needed. That's a tough thing to let go of. We spend our lives being indispensable to these little people and to our colleagues, and then one day, we wake up and discover to our horror that the world continues to turn perfectly well without our constant input. And that's the emotional low point, I think. That moment you realize you're just manufacturing purpose, and it feels hollow. It's a painful realization that the identity you held so dear has to evolve, or you'll be stuck in the past, polishing the silver for a dinner party that's never going to happen. It's the moment where you have to really ask yourself, what brings me joy? Not what makes me useful to others. And there's a real grief in that. We're grieving the person we were, and society doesn't really give us a script for that kind of mourning. There's no bereavement leave for retiring from parenthood.
Exactly. And for me, the answer didn't come overnight. It came when I stopped doing and just started being. I gave myself permission to be unproductive. I sat on the porch and read a book, not to prepare for a lesson, but just because the cover looked interesting. I took a walk without a destination in mind, which felt rebellious. It was awkward, but it brings up an interesting cultural point. I was reading about retirement and relationships in Sweden.
Oh, that's fascinating. What did you find?
They have this concept called sarbo, which means living apart together. It's particularly popular among older adults. Couples in committed relationships choose to maintain their own separate homes. And the philosophy behind it is what's so powerful. It's this deep cultural respect for personal autonomy. It says that your individuality doesn't have to be sacrificed for your partnership.
I have to admit, my first reaction to that is, it sounds a bit lonely. Isn't the point to build a life together under one roof? It feels like it could be a slippery slope to drifting apart. What would the neighbors think? It seems so transactional. I mean, after all these years, you'd think you'd want to be closer, not farther apart. Our whole culture is built on the idea of the couple as a single unit, a team that shares everything, right down to the remote control. What happens if one person gets sick? It seems to fly in the face of in sickness and in health, right?
I thought so too at first. You're right. The living arrangement itself is very different and not for everyone. But the beautiful idea we can borrow from it is the importance of intentional space and intentional time. It's a reminder to actively carve out a piece of life that is yours, so you can be a more whole person when you come back together. It's about replacing default proximity with intentional connection. The idea is that when you do spend time together, it's a conscious, deliberate choice, not just because you happen to share a mortgage. It makes that time more precious. It's about ensuring that the commitment is between two whole, independent people. I wonder if you've ever felt your own identity kind of merge with your role as a husband or father.
Completely. It's the classic American model in a way. The family unit is the center of the universe, and we see it as a success if the couple becomes one entity, two become one. But what happens when one half of that entity feels a bit lost? This Swedish idea, it's not about breaking the unit apart, it's about strengthening the individuals within it. It's permission, really. Permission to have a self, to not have to sacrifice every personal interest for the sake of the we. Permission to have a bad day without feeling like you're bringing the whole household down with you. It's about having a place to retreat to be just you, so you can come back to the relationship refreshed and whole.
Permission is the perfect word. We don't have to adopt the living arrangement to adopt the mindset. The lesson from Sarbo is to consciously carve out your own life, to ask yourself, what belongs to me and me alone? For me, that became my pottery class. It's on Tuesday nights. It has nothing to do with my husband or my kids. It's messy, my hands are covered in clay, and most of what I make is laughably lopsided. But it's mine. The first few times I went, I felt guilty, like I should be home making dinner or doing something productive. But then I realized this was productive. I was producing joy. It's a space where I'm not a wife or a mom or a teacher. I'm just Eleanor, a woman trying to make a bowl. The intense focus it requires silences all the other noisy thoughts in my head, and it's slowly helping me answer the question of who Eleanor is now.
I love that. My version of that was picking up my old guitar. It felt so foreign in my hands, and the calluses on my fingers were a new experience, but every time I learn a new chord, it feels like I'm reclaiming a small piece of the young man who existed long before he was dad. The one who dreamed of being in a band, not of managing a 401k. It's a slow process, and frankly, my family is tired of hearing House of the Rising Sun, but it feels real. The other night, I finally got the fingering right for a chord I've been struggling with for weeks, and this pure, uncomplicated happiness just washed over me. It wasn't for anyone else. It didn't pay a bill or solve a problem. It was just for me. It's a conversation I'm having with a younger version of myself, a self I thought was gone for good. I think this is something so many of our listeners can relate to, that feeling of rediscovering a long-lost part of yourself. So we want to bring you into the conversation. Eleanor, what's one question you'd ask our listeners to reflect on?
I would ask, when you were a child, before you had all these adult responsibilities, what did you love to do just for the fun of it? Not as a career, not as something practical, but just for the sheer joy of it. Did you want to be an artist, an explorer, a storyteller? Let that memory come back and sit with it for a moment. Don't judge it. Just welcome it back. What did that pure compulsion joy feel like in your body? For me, it was making mud pies. Pottery is just a grown-up, slightly cleaner version of that.
That's a wonderful question. It gets to the heart of it, and I'll add one. What is one role or label you've carried for years that you'd be willing to gently set down, even for just an hour a day, to make space for something new? Maybe it's the family cook, the planner, or the responsible one. What might happen if you let someone else take the lead, or if you simply let things be unplanned for a little while? What adventure, big or small, might find you in that open space? I was always the one who planned our vacations down to the minute. Last month, my wife and I just got in the car and drove with no destination. It was terrifying. And then it was the best trip we've had in years.
These are such important questions to ask ourselves. And it doesn't have to be a class you pay for. It could be joining a local walking group in the park, volunteering at the library for a few hours a week, or even just starting a journal to write down your stories. The key is that it's just for you. So please go to the comments section and share your thoughts. What's your pottery class? What's your guitar? Your experience is a gift to others walking the same path.
Exactly. And we want you to know we're listening. We read every comment, and in our next episode, we might even share a few of the most touching stories or brilliant ideas you've shared. Because this isn't just our conversation, it's yours too. And that brings us perfectly to our next conversation. We're going to ask a question that many of us might avoid. Are you living the life your 18-year-old self once dreamed of? We'll be exploring the biggest regret of a lifetime, the promise to our younger selves. It's a powerful discussion about the dreams we put on a shelf and whether it's ever too late to honor those promises. It's a conversation you truly won't want to miss.
So I guess the big takeaway today is that the empty nest doesn't have to be empty. It can be an open space, a clean slate. It's a challenging, sometimes scary, but ultimately freeing chance to get reacquainted with the person you put on hold for a while. It's about turning the page, not closing the book. It's about realizing the most exciting chapters might be the ones you get to write for yourself, with no script at all.
Well said. And the lesson from Sweden is a beautiful one. Cherish your independence. Nurture your own garden. A strong partnership relies on two whole and happy individuals who choose to share their journey. And that's only possible when you also nurture a strong self. The best gift you can give your grown children and your partner is a version of you that is vibrant, engaged, and happy in your own skin. That kind of happiness is the legacy that truly lasts.
If this conversation felt like one you've been needing to have, please consider sharing it with a friend. And be sure to subscribe so we can continue the chat next time.
Until then, take care of yourselves.
And each other.